And welcome back to Lantern Corp videos. Today's Lantern Corp video comes to us from Kakarot, Bardock's son, who asked the question, what Lantern Corp does Luke Skywalker belong in? Luke Skywalker is the son of Darth Vader, Anakin Skywalker, more than likely the chosen one, although it is still implied Vader was the chosen one. But you can make an argument because he brought Vader back from the dark for Vader to kill the Emperor that it was Luke who did it? I don't know. Point being, he's our main lead through the original trilogy of Star Wars and one of the big focal points of the sequel trilogy. But the question is, what Lantern Corps does he belong to? Now, Luke has gone through a lot of changes throughout his lifetime, character-wise. So, depending on where you're looking at him in his life, he can qualify for many different Lantern Corps. Let's get out of the way right now. He is dead, technically, so Black is obviously one that we'd have to consider. But take the Black Lantern Corps out of the equation. If Luke were still alive, where would he belong? Let's talk about some of the ones I definitely think he could qualify for. Right from the gate, Green I think is a definite. Luke's journey through the original series is, try not to succumb to the dark side, hate, fear, all that, and overcome that and become a Jedi using the good light side of the Force. Overcoming great fear, immense willpower. That is all trademarks of the Green Lantern Corps. Luke could easily be a Green Lantern. Now, when you look at him in the later part of the series, the sequel series, yes, his will is waver, his faith is waver, all that. If he were a Green Lantern in the original trilogy, he might still have his ring, but it would be very weak and not functioning. But he'd still have it. And then by the end of the 8th movie, he would eventually have his full powers of Green Lantern back again. So Green, I think, is a definite one you can factor in. In fact, let's actually, seeing as I got 4 different candidates here for rings, why don't we go one he can, one he can't. One I don't think he does belong in, weirdly enough, is compassion. Now, that's not to say Luke isn't compassionate. Most Jedi are compassionate, but the problem is most Jedi are pretty neutral with their compassion. They care about everyone, but they're not like, oh, please help us. There's oh, I'm so sorry, let me help you. It's I sympathize, I empathize with what you're doing. It's Jedi actually have to be on the neutral side of things. Anakin was an example of why you're supposed to do that. Of course, the Jedi aren't perfect either, and it did bite him in the ass. I think they were as neutral as they were. And Luke is no exception. Luke is a bit of a different case for Jedi, as he's a bit more of a later version of what Jedi should have been, if that makes any sense. But even throughout the original series, we do see some definitely strong elements of compassion, but we see a lot more of his will. Other candidates we're going to get to later on. During his time in The Mandalorian, he's probably also still very compassionate, but he's also got a bit of that arrogance in him because, Jedi Master Luke. And obviously we see him in episode 8 too. Compassion is not a strong point, although it does come back later on. So compassion I just don't think works. One I think does work, fear. It's weird to say, but Luke actually could very easily qualify for a Yellow Lantern ring. The Emperor was afraid of what he could become. Vader had some fears of what he could become. And that's just the original series. Obviously, when you get into Mandalorian and the sequel trilogy, Luke's reputation is immense. When he goes and wrecks that hallway of Dark Troopers, look at Grand Moff Gideon, or Moff Gideon's face is just, oh shit. Yeah, no, people are afraid of Grandmaster Luke. People are afraid of Jedi Master Luke. If it was rightfully so. Fear could actually easily work for Luke Skywalker. Snoke was afraid of Luke. So, yeah, I think definitely fear could work in Luke's favor. Now, one that doesn't, but at the same time, at the right point in time in his life could work, is rage. Now, rage doesn't work overall because Luke basically got rid of it. It's not what generally fueled him. However, in the moments with, when we see him contemplating taking out Ben, dealing with the Force aberration of Vader, almost killing Vader in Return of the Jedi, Luke had to battle his rage. He had to overcome it. So there was rage to be had there. So he definitely, at points in the series, could be a Red Lantern. But if you're asking me at the overall character's, at the core of the character, the answer is no. He cannot be a he cannot be a Red Lantern. Something else he could be is something else I think is one of the strongest candidates is Blue Lantern. Now, Blue Lanterns obviously are the Lantern Corps of Hope. Hope also translates to faith. Hope can now being a Blue Lantern. It's about a combination of A, having a large amount of hope in yourself, a large amount of faith, and B, others having hope and faith in you. The more people can inspire more you can inspire great hope and faith, and the more you can have more great hope and faith you have, the more powerful or more likely you are to be a Blue Lantern. Luke, while his faith certainly wavered and his hope certainly wavered in the 8th movie for the majority of it, although they eventually return, he is pretty much he hopes that he can bring his father back. He has faith he can bring his father back. He can sense it. He's gonna stop the Emperor and the Empire. Train. Everyone's putting their hopes in Luke to stop Vader. And then you come into the Mandalorian and then the sequel trilogy. Everyone is putting their hopes and bets on Luke. Their faith is being put into Luke. So Luke is actually a very good candidate for a Blue Lantern ring as well. The other 2 Lantern rings I don't think he could qualify for, though, is love, simply because, even though Anakin said, I guess you could say Jedi are encouraged to love. It's like, there really is no indication Luke, love for anyone is not what really drove Luke. Yeah, he had love for his sister, sure. But is that what basically drove Luke? No, I don't think so. And then, obviously, avarice, no. Luke can be a little selfish, but it's more impatience than selfishness, or avarice in this case, in Empire, for example. So no, I don't think he'd be a Orange Lantern. But the one we need to really kind of address here is White Lanterns, because even though as a Force ghost they are technically dead, they are also among the Force, the living Force, as Qui-Gon described it. How does that translate when it comes to a lantern ring? I mean, he has no corporeal form. So the lantern ring theoretically, lantern rings can even go to sentient colonies of bacteria that form a mass. But an incorporeal being like a Force ghost, I don't know if that can work. Especially because he doesn't have a body anymore. I don't even think that's actually a good counterpoint to the Black Lantern. Even though he's technically dead, he doesn't have a body anymore. Most supremely powerful Jedi, when they die or cut down, just disappear like that. Their bodies are just gone. So Black Lantern rings, I don't think can work in that regard. Either that, or I don't remember how Black Lantern ring functions in that case. In the sense that maybe they will actually form a physical body for said spirit or whatever. I don't think that's how it works. But even then, still, even when he was alive, could he have been a White Lantern? Well, he did embody. He was extremely powerful in the Force, which is almost like a living entity in and of itself. I'll say this. It's certainly a possibility he could have been a White Lantern. But among the 4 choices I've given, I think it's the least likely. I think I'll go that route. Least likely, but still possible, I think. So that leaves us now with blue, yellow, and green. So what do I think is the most likely Lantern Corps Luke would belong in? Going from least likely to most likely, I think fear would probably fall under the least likely. Just because the amount of fear Luke instilled through his early career was nowhere near as much as his later career. And even then, Snoke was afraid of Luke, but not to the extent where, I think a lantern ring would go to Luke. Because Kylo, I think, also is more... I think Kylo is more angry at Luke than afraid, though he was still very much wary of Luke's power, although he had no hesitations about taking on Luke in the Episode 8 fight. And Snoke was like, oh, yes, we're just going to blow up that planet. That's what we're going to do. So, yeah, while fear, I think, is still a very strong possibility, I think it's the least likely. So that does leave us with hope and will. Now, these are two among the only two lantern rings that can actually be dual wielded. I brought this up, I think, in the last video. But the question is Luke equal in both will and hope, or is he um, weaker in one or the other? Well, for me, I think it comes down to the episode 8, because that's the last time we see Luke alive, and what we get going on there. Luke had given up. He had, he resigned himself and all that, so that weakened his will, and it weakened the amount of faith and hope he had in himself. But that did not stop the amount of faith and hope others had in him. Hell, just Rey Alone still had faith and hope in Luke throughout most of that movie. So I think, weirdly enough, Hope would be his most likely candidate, simply because people didn't give up in Luke, even though he gave up in himself. So I think he would actually be able to hold on to it. Well, it wouldn't be as powerful as when he had all that power and faith in him, but he'd be able to hold on to a Blue Lantern ring despite the fact, though he'd probably just take it off and just not use it. But yeah, I think blue, surprisingly, is the more likely between green and blue, despite the fact that green's usually the more likely candidate. But anyway, that's just my opinion. Ultimately, what do you think Luke's Lantern Corp is? Do you think it's green, blue, yellow, white, or do you think it's any of the other ones that I didn't think it was? Put in the comments below and let me know. But thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed. Like, comment, share, and subscribe. As always, who wants to review something, put in the comments below. Let us know. We'll do a review of it at some point. I'm going to be recording my what if for later tomorrow. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you later, folks.